I spent so much time trying to help him and make him sober more than he was even helping himself.
I want to thank you, Diane, for coming on the Recovery Vow podcast. I really appreciate your transparency and just willingness to come on and share your story. So I've known you through going to Stevens Creek Church for quite a few years now, and I know your son, Peyton. He was a good man, and I know that this is going to be difficult to talk about some things, but I know deep down that your story is going to touch a lot of mamas out there that just need to hear it. My mom could have been one of the moms in a seat like yours. I mean, I pushed the envelope, and so there's going to be some moms that still have their children and they just don't know what to do. And they may want to know that your story is something that gives them hope, even in loss, because they see how strong you are on the other side of it. So I wanted to open up and just ask you to tell us about Peyton.
He went through elementary school, middle school, high school, went to UGA, graduated from college. He worked 2 jobs. He got out of school. Even through struggling through his addiction, he always worked. And when he passed away, he was working 2 jobs. He was a referee for the county, the YMCA, church leagues, high schools. He was a basketball ref.
Really?
So he played basketball in high school. Then he worked a day job at Mount Vintage because he loved being outdoors. Didn't really necessarily do anything with his degree, which was in journalism, but we didn't care. We just wanted him to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. What was Peyton like as a child?
He was a little quieter, he went to basketball camps, but he wasn't one of those kids that ran in there and was embracing everybody around him. He was kind of like checking it out, a little quieter. As he grew, everybody would tell me in high school, they said he is the funniest person. He gave everybody a nickname. They loved being around him. I don't want to say, popularity-wise, but he was pretty popular in school. He played basketball all through middle school and high school.
Yeah. Sounds like he's a basketball star. Was he really good at basketball?
He was pretty good. He wasn't tall, but he was 5'10", 5'11".
I'm 6'3", and I can't do one thing on a basketball court.
No, he was pretty good, I have to say.
Did he ever tell you the first time he tried any kind of drug or alcohol or anything? Do you remember how old he might have been?
Well, I know that I found some weed, but I found it in his room, hidden. And, of course, it wasn't his. It was somebody else that he was holding it for.
I've had other people's stuff in my house, too.
Okay. Well, that was probably in 8th grade.
It's the 13, 14, 15. I mean, everybody that comes on, especially when I talk to guys, it's like we try it when we're like 13, 14, 15. There's something about that age frame where we want to connect or get closer to people that are older than us. I don't know what it is.
And for him, I think some of it was trying to be comfortable, in his own skin. Maybe my other son always said he thought he lacked a little self-confidence, even though he didn't project that. Mm-hmm. But it looked, felt like he had some self-confidence. And I think that made him take the edge off.
Really?
So that started in 8th grade. And then I think he just kind of experimented with that. But he didn't really get into the pills until college. Actually, until he graduated from college. So I'm thinking that he experimented probably around 2010. That's when we really started having problems.
And these were like pain pills?
Pain pills, opioids.
Yeah, opioids.
His drug of choice was oxycodone at first. Mm-hmm. But then as time progressed, it went to almost anything that he could get.
I've experimented with those. I love taking those if I was drinking. I would take 2 or 3 Percocets. That's why they tell you not to drink with the pills, because it's another level of intensity that, I hate to say it, it's like euphoric and it's a good feeling, but it's dangerous. It's so dangerous. So he graduated college and trying these different pills and drinking or whatever else, but it sounds like he was functioning.
He was functioning. I would say around the summer of 2010, he had an overdose. And he had an overdose in my home. It's the weirdest thing. I was getting ready to come to church, come to Stevens Creek, and I had fallen asleep on the couch. His room was close to that in the living room. I woke up like about 6 in the morning, and I thought, I got a couple hours to sleep before church. I'm going to go to my bed and get comfortable. But I thought, let me go check on him. And so I went to check on him, and he was sitting up in his bed, had his laptop in his lap, and he was just like asleep. I went over there to shake him and say, hey, I took his laptop, why don't you lay down and get comfortable too? Figured he had fallen asleep like that. Well, I couldn't wake him. And so I tried and tried and tried. And so then I ran and got my cell phone, called 911. Never done CPR before in my life, and they walked me through it.
They walked you through how to do it on
How
your
to
son
do it.
over the phone.
So they told me, I had to get him off the bed. So pulled him off. His bed was pretty high off the floor, and he just kind of bounced and never came to. And so I performed CPR, and then he came back. They got him back with Narcan, and that was the first of 9.
He overdosed 9 times.
He overdosed 9 times. I resuscitated him twice, his dad 3 times, my sister, a girlfriend, his best friend. And then on the 9th time, I want to say nobody was there. And I always said I wish somebody would have been there to save him. But then, I have come to peace with maybe that was his time. So
Yeah. Now, you mentioned his dad. You and his dad aren't married.
we are not.
But you guys did remarry, so it's like y'all have a working relationship. Everything's good as far as the blended family. Y'all co-parent together well.
Yes.
Great.
It's one thing I can say during Peyton's addiction, we were definitely on the same page.
Good.
I mean, we communicated. We didn't have that hostility. We didn't have any of that. We were united for Peyton, if for no other reason.
Yeah.
So
Just talking about marriage for a minute, being a parent of a child in addiction, how much does it rock your marriage at home?
I would say because they become the center of everything.
Right.
Your whole life around, are they okay? Where are they? What are they doing? Your conversations at dinner. And especially for us, our conversations, even though we weren't married, but when we were together, obviously were always about him and what can we do to make him better? It just takes over.
Yeah. But you've got a fantastic husband, and he has a fantastic stepfather. You guys made it through that, and that's impressive. I mean, that's really good because it's hard to remember it's God, your spouse, and your children. But when your children are the main topic of discussion, I'm assuming it would take away the things that you're looking forward to in these different seasons of life.
Well, I think that, you're distracted, right, from each other because you're
Yeah.
focusing all on others. So our divorce was not because of Peyton's addiction,
Yep.
but I can very much see how it can affect a marriage.
Yeah. There's a huge balance in being too much of an enabler. How did you respond to that?
I really think that I was a lot an enabler. When I was going through this, I would always say, if I did this, then it would equal this. If I showed him a better life, then he would say, oh, this is much better, and then it would equal this. His actions would change.
Right.
And so I spent so much time trying to help him and make him sober more than he was even helping himself. And so because of that, I think that I enabled. But Bruce and I were dating when Peyton was alive. We just got married a year and a half ago after Peyton had passed because he has been gone for 5 years. But while we were dating, he was very, very good and understood that he was my priority. He was my job, and I was just trying to keep him alive. And he stepped to the plate.
Did you hear what you just said? You were just trying to keep him alive. Because that's a huge responsibility that you put on yourself as a parent.
I did carry that. I will say that was my main objective. I wanted him to live. I wanted him to get to the other side, to see that life was better, that this could be his life, just like a lot of his friends.
Yeah.
Part of Peyton's problem was he did not think he had a problem. Even with all those overdoses, you would think that he did, but he thought he knew what he was doing. He thought he had it under control, and he would tell me that. I know what I'm doing. Like, you can't, if you're getting anything off the street, you don't know what you're getting, which ended up being his demise as he got something laced with fentanyl.
We had somebody on the podcast the other day, and I think he said 80% of drugs that are out there now are man-made that are causing these overdoses and taking these lives. I told my wife, if this was around when I was actively using, I probably
Wouldn't be here.
No, because I put myself in so many crazy situations, dangerous places with dangerous people.
Yeah. Well, what do they say? If you're not getting a prescription from a doctor and getting it from a pharmacist or a pharmacy, you're playing Russian roulette.
That's true.
So,
Do you feel like addiction is generational?
it wasn't in my family. I don't have anybody that's, an alcoholic. I do have some family members that like to smoke weed, but that's where it stopped.
Yeah.
And
It's like a 50-50 split when I ask that question, but I do know that it runs in my family.
well, I've seen some people that have had an alcoholic home and they take the stance, I'm going to stay away from it and not be anything like that. And then you have kids that also become alcoholics from living in that environment, and they say, well, I'm alcoholic because.
Yeah.
So I think it could go either way, really.
Yeah. Hey, before we get back to today's episode, I want to take a second and thank the entire team over at Burroughs Elijah Attorneys. This group is phenomenal, and I can't thank you guys enough for being sponsors of the podcast. If you're in the CSRA and you need any legal help at all, consider calling the team over at Burroughs Elijah. Can you walk us through the day that Peyton passed and what that looked like and what you felt?
Absolutely. I was actually in Atlanta visiting my other son and my grandkids. I was babysitting. And so I was supposed to get in earlier in the day, but his flight got delayed. So I wasn't actually here, but I got a phone call. I was in Covington. My husband was driving, and I got a call from his phone. And I answered, and they said, are you Peyton's mom? And I said, yes, I am. And they said, are you sitting down or is somebody with you? Are you driving? And I said, what's going on? And they said, we found him unconscious in his car, and we've called 911. Well, I had a tracker on Peyton's phone, so I knew exactly where he was. And he was one block over from my brother's house, and he was on his way to my brother's house. And so I immediately called my brother and said, Peyton's had another incident. He's here. Can you run over there? And so he did. And then I called my sister, and then I called Peyton's dad, and I'm calling everybody to say we've had something happen to him. And then I'm just a nervous wreck. My whole body just starts shutting down. That's how I get when my nerves come. And so I text them and said, please do not tell me anything bad. I have an hour and a half till I'm home, 2 hours till I'm home. I didn't say a word to my husband for an hour because I was just praying and praying and praying. And I said in my prayer, God, you know what we've been through. All my other prayers to you before has been to save him and to give him another chance. But you know what we've been through, and you know what Peyton's been through. If it is your will to take him, then I understand. And then when I got to Thompson, I got a text that said he's alive, he's awake, and he's talking. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm angry now. Now I'm talking nonstop. I'm angry. I'm going to send him to Arizona, to the desert where, he can go to some outbound rehab. And
what do you think made you angry?
I was angry because he did it again. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
just can't get it right.
Just can't. Yeah. And gosh, we've been battling this for, 8-9 years. Bruce, my husband, drove me up to MCG. That's where he was. And I drove up and I see all my family outside. I've come from a large family. I have a great support system. I see Fred out there with his girlfriend, and I see everybody. And it didn't alarm me because we have done this many times. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the ER room gets so crowded that you step outside to get some air. I looked, I saw the ER was packed. I thought, oh, they're all just standing outside waiting for me. Because I did get a phone call or a text that said, how far away are you? My husband lets me off, and my ex, Peyton's dad, starts walking down, and he starts shaking his head. And he says he didn't make it. And I start screaming, say, what do you mean he didn't make it? You guys told me he was awake, he was alive, he was talking. What do you mean? And they had confused him with another patient. Oh, no. So when they came out to say, in fact, they came and got Fred, his dad, to go see him. They said he was awake, alive, talking, sitting up. And when Fred went back out to see him, they stopped him at the door. And they said, no, you can't go in there. And he said, what do you mean? And they said, we need to send you to another room. And he was with my sister. My sister's a nurse, so he went to this room he said, this doesn't sound good. And then they came in and told him that he had passed away and that they had got him confused with another patient. You know, I feel bad for the person that did that, that made that. That's a terrible mistake
That's
to
a
make.
horrible mistake. I mean, it just,
Horrible, because, but I feel like, in a way, it was God's way to get me home.
isn't that something?
I feel that way. I really do. And I wasn't angry about it. Some other people in my family were very angry about it. And they did talk to someone about it and said, please use this in one of your testing training sessions. But for me, I just said, I got here. And by the time I got there, Peyton had not passed that long, maybe 45 minutes. And so they let us see him. And he looked good. He looked like he was sleeping, so I didn't have any bad memories. He, I got to touch him. I got to, he looked great.
Yeah.
And so there was a peace for me with all of that. When you are the loved one of an addict, there's all kind of emotions you go through all the time.
Yeah.
You're sad, you're happy, you're angry, you're sick. I would physically get sick when he was in the hospital because I didn't know if he was going to make it or not. And so you go through all these emotions and then you go through them again. So anger was just one of those things that once you find out he's okay, you're like, I'm so mad at you again, But I thought back at the prayer. I couldn't be mad. I had to be at peace because I said that prayer. You know what we've been through. You know what he's been through. And if this is your will, then you can take him.
Yeah.
How can I be mad about that?
Right. Peyton had gone through different treatment centers, and so he had tried to do the work. And you wanted him to see what life could be like if he could just get over this hump or this hurdle. I've been there.
Yeah.
I tried to take my life,
I always say this to people. I say, you look at your children when they're young, when they're in elementary school or middle school, their desire is not to grow up and be an addict.
Yeah.
They want to have everything else that everybody else wants in life. They want to have a family. They want to be successful.
They want to fit in.
But it happens. And I always tell people it can happen to you. It can happen to anyone. And even people that aren't addicts. If it's somebody that has a little bit of anxiety that they're going to try out for cheerleading or a basketball or whatever it is, whatever events going on, studying for exams, and they want a pill to either help them stay awake all night or to take the edge off of things, and they don't get it from the right people, then it could be laced.
Yeah.
And I've heard many stories about people that 12, 15-year-olds,
They have no idea what they're
they
getting.
have no idea.
There's a lot of heavy conversation that we've had in this talk today, but what's something good that's come from walking through this storm?
Well, this picture behind me, this poster of Peyton, that is probably 2 weeks after he came from Bridges of Hope. Bridges of Hope was a great place for him. He stayed there for 6 months. He did wonderfully, but he came back and went to his playground and his playmates. And when you do that, then it goes back to what you left behind.
Happens.
It happens. But what I will say is I have went and spoke at Bridges of Hope. I have gone to Columbia County Schools to see if I could speak there, just at middle school where it starts, where kids are starting to get curious, the 13, 14-year-olds that we're talking about. And I've also gotten involved in some groups. And if I can change one child, if I could save one child, if I could help one parent, then I've done my job. And being involved in a couple of the organizations that I am, and we do some rallies, we speak on our children's behalf. I learned from other parents. I learned from other moms and dads that have gone through this. And I'm still learning. I pick up things that will help me, hopefully, when I get in a situation and I'm talking to another parent.
Yeah. Because I truly believe that platform like this on a podcast or in a school, you're going to have the opportunity to reach a mom that absolutely needs to hear this story. They need to know who Peyton was. They need to know who Diane is, because his testimony could help their family.
Yeah.
It could change their family and the outcome of things. So be proud of that, if I could tell you anything. One other thing that I wanted to ask you, and it kind of made you upset before we started, but what do you think Peyton would want you to know today?
I think he would want me to know that he's okay. I think he probably rolls eyes at me a couple times, some of the things that I do, but I think he would be proud that I am talking for him, speaking for him, and not letting his name be forgotten.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I hashtag whenever I post about him is say his name. I think that is very, very important. As we say, he's no longer here, but he is still my child.
Yeah.
I have a child in heaven and I have a child on earth. And so I speak his name, and I love when other people speak his name. I may cry when they speak his name. I may cry at a story that they tell me, but at the same time, it warms my heart. So say his name.
I love that. I feel like you're making a commitment to yourself and to Peyton and his legacy to say his name and to just carry that on. And so I commend you for that. If you were speaking to other moms that are dealing with a child that's in addiction right now, what would be words of confirmation, encouragement? What would you tell a mom that's just struggling to just show her child what life could be like on the other side? What encouragement would you give them?
Well, everybody's story is different. And everybody's way of handling their child is different, not right or wrong. So I want to make that clear because I got a lot of advice when I was going through it that if it were my child, I'd kick him out. If this were my child, I'd do this. You don't know what you do until you're going through that situation.
That's right.
But what I will say, and I wish I would have done some of this earlier on, is I would research, get educated, understand about how the brain works with addiction, understand what addiction does to your body. The second thing I would say is to get in a support group. I was not in a support group before Peyton passed away. I wish I would have been. I went to one it's called Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, and it was for parents that are struggling with their child that is an addict and going through this. And I went there after Peyton passed because someone invited me. So I was the only one that had lost a child, but I listened to everybody's story, and you can relate to it. Story might be different, but you can so relate. And just hearing different people talk, you feel you realize you're not alone. You realize there's somebody out there that you could go talk to. And I think that's very, very important because so long you may feel like you don't have anybody because they don't understand. They're not going through that. So I would highly recommend that. And then now that Peyton has passed, I've gotten involved on the other side of moms and dads that have lost their children.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for what you're doing.
You. It is one of the worst things I've ever gone through in my life. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And whatever I can do to help somebody, I'm there.
Yeah. 5 years have gone by. What do you do as a mom, as a grandma these days?
I talk about them. We talk about funny stories. I just had a family vacation. There was 25 of us there.
25?
25, and we're a large family. And so everybody has a Peyton story. And I may have heard it 5 times, but I love to hear it a 6th time. So we do that. And I take his ashes. He was cremated. I take his ashes with me everywhere I go. And so that I feel like he's experiencing what I wanted him to experience. And that's a lot of comfort for me as well. Yes. And he's been to the beach a lot. And we actually bought a brick. When I went through Peyton's phone when he first passed away, I spent so much time looking for text, and I was on investigating mode, trying to find out where he got this from.
You wanted somebody to blame.
I did. I wanted somebody to blame. And but I never looked at his pictures. And my granddaughter had his phone after I disconnected it, and she was looking at pictures, and I found this picture of him where he was down at Hilton Head, and it said, "Paradise, never want to leave." So I took that quote and put it on a brick down where we go all the time. So he's there.
Yeah.
And it's just a comforting feeling.
That's amazing. Diane, I want to say thank you again for coming on this podcast today and sharing.
You're welcome.
You brought a level of joy and peace and faith to this conversation, and so I commend you for that, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I'm just so proud of you. Thank you for
so
doing
much.
what you're doing. Hey, thanks for tuning in today's episode of Recovery About Podcast. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to connect with us, you can connect with us through email at recoveryvow@gmail.com, our website, recoveryvow.com, or you can find us on our different social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But we would love for you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to pre-order a copy of my book, Marriage After Addiction, Take Back Your Life Together, you can do that through the store at exomarriage.com, or you'll see a link on any of our social media platforms. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Recovery Vow Podcast is brought to you by Goldmec, Newsom Electric, S&S Supplies, Carpet Cleaning Pros of Augusta, Rhett Walker, Atlas Health and Wellness, Norval Fixture and Equipment, Augusta Lawn and Turf, the Augusta Dream Center, Bagwell Insurance, Sally Kohler Photography, Burroughs Elijah Attorneys, Communigraphics, Kendra Neal Studio, Kendrick Paint and Body, Coleman Construction, Augusta Magazine, State Farm Insurance, Craig International. And I want to say thanks to everyone else who's contributed to the Recovery Vow podcast. We couldn't do this without you.